The Bruins have hit the portal again. Who is it? Is it a big name? Let's talk about it on Locked On UCLA.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey everybody, it's Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for tuning in to Locked On UCLA today. It's free wherever you get your podcasts, and it's available on YouTube, so go hit that subscribe button. Thanks for liking, commenting, listening, wherever you may be. Thanks for all the love. This episode is actually brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post that job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Well, let's cruise on here with Locked On UCLA. Let's keep on rocking and rolling. The Bruins have picked up their third transfer portal commit. Who is it? Is it from the Ivy League? Maybe you already heard, maybe you didn't. UCLA got, yes, their biggest gets of the offseason so far. None other than maybe the greatest name a punter could have in Will Powers. Yes, did I say punter? I did say punter, as we got you guys, maybe on a joke there. But Will Powers, the Ivy League transfer from Princeton, a Manhattan Beach product in his hometown, went to high school in, I believe, New Jersey or Connecticut, one of those two. I blank out the top of my head. Whatever it is, he went to Princeton 3 times all Ivy League, first team, second team, and this season most recently was an honorable mention. If you remember, arguably UCLA's biggest loss so far, in my opinion, in the portal, not including graduates and who's going to the draft, in the portal so far has been Nick Barmira, considering he is both the punter and kicker. So UCLA in one swoop has to replace a kicker and a punter. They got Powers, who has a year of eligibility, and he will be the punter for UCLA. So they get their third commit, and arguably you look at the numbers, he's got a long of, I believe, a 75-yard punt. He's been pretty impressive, averaging over 45 to 50 yards. This year, closer to 45 yards per punt, getting 13 punts inside the 20, nailing 50-yard punts for the time. So, and only had one blocked. And of course, that's up to how long your line holds up. So UCLA addresses a need against a punter. And over the weekend, speaking of the portal, UCLA was able to have Dante Moore on the official visit. You probably, if you really are super interested in high school kids committing and flipping commitments and posting pictures of 70 different versions of them in college football jerseys, he posted his UCLA football look, what he looks like in the UCLA swag. He posted what it looked like in his official visit. That's not always for me. I don't really care how many pictures you take in UCLA jerseys or Oregon jerseys. It's just weird that that's how kids decide to recruit nowadays. This is how it look in a UCLA jersey. Whatever it is, that's how it's a part of the recruitment. And funny enough, throughout social media, Dante to LA was actually trending, especially from what I saw over Twitter. Dante to LA was trending. People were trying to have him have fun as he, I believe, went to UCLA football practice, maybe even, I think, went to the UCLA basketball game, which we'll get to more on the basketball team throughout the rest of this pod today. But UCLA put forth their best effort to get Dante Moore. Is this actually what's going to happen before the early signing day, considering he's already committed? We already went over this to Oregon, still other places. He's a Detroit kid from Michigan, got Michigan State, other places all wanting to recruit Dante Moore. And yet he came through and was able to make an appearance at UCLA over the most recent weekends during the first, full weekend of December, second full weekend, whatever it is. He came through and UCLA made their pitch. Now, hopefully in the next shortened couple of days, maybe a week, we'll find him signing. I guess he's already committed, right? So there's not really anything for him to change other than saying, I'm actually changing my commitment. Nothing will be for certain until he actually puts on the hat, maybe fakes a couple of people out by grabbing a hat, throwing one away, whatever it is, and signs that paper that says that's where he's initially going to go to school and play college football. Not truly maybe signs that he's going to come or not going to come just yet, but he just has official visit And UCLA also over the weekend, as I've already mentioned, picked up the punter Will Powers, 3-time All-Conference over in the Ivy League. So he's easily going to come over and give UCLA a year in the stopgap for the punting. So the Bruins still need a kicker to figure out what quarterback they want to go after, whether it's in the portal, which we've already talked about, whether it be DJ, Leary, other non-Power 5 options, Group of 5 options, Power 5 options, or even find someone in the FCS. They still have their own internal options. And then still, UCLA must hit the secondary, which I'm not entirely sure has been addressed just yet. And I haven't seen maybe too many visits one way or the other for the Bruins in terms of who is actually going to help out in UCLA secondary, safeties, DBs, whatever it is in the 2023 squad just yet when it comes to the portal. All those things still need to, matriculate, come to fruition, and UCLA will eventually get there. But at the moment, that's just not the case. Other news and notes for UCLA football. One, three key faces when I've seen at practice for the bowl game. DTR, Charbonnet, and from I believe Jake Bobo. So those three will be playing the bowl game against Pitt December 30th. At least they're in the practice, right? Things could change. Ideas, minds could change. But if you're going to the practices, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't want to put yourself through the practices if you're not going to play with your team one final time. And again, UCLA football, still one more game in 2022, closing in on it just under 3 weeks until that game against the likes of Pitt in the Sun Bowl. The Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl. This is the old school logo, right? I remember the old school Tony the Tiger logo, the old school Bruin logo. Remember, we've had Ed Kazarian be on the pod saying, hey, this is what we like. The Bruins always tend to have some good times in the Sun Bowl. And with Pitt already having their starting quarterback in the portal in Keaton Slovis, one would think if UCLA starters are playing, it should be an easy win. Still, that is all to be determined. But all the things are UCLA's big three, DTR, Bobo, and Charbonnet, in no particular order there, were at practice and making appearances at practice just like Dante Moore was. And you had Bill McGovern making a sighting at practice. Remember, he's missed the last, I believe, 5 to 6 games, still with the only warning of it being of an illness. So lots of more news and notes here during this first segment of Locked On UCLA. You've got your 3 offensive weapons all showing up to practice and looking like they will be available in that bowl game against Pitt. And the defensive coordinator, where you could argue UCLA season maybe wasn't the fact that the defense wasn't there. It was more, unfortunately, that Bill McGovern and his health, maybe we don't really know the full details, but he was not available to be there to coach at games, whatever it may be. There's not truly an actual answer whether we'll get that or whether we won't. There's out there, but he was at practice when reports. I think I saw Ben Bolch, whoever it was, tweeting it out. The UCLA beat writer for the LA Times. There's just different things. How the UCLA season could have gone if UCLA could have had their defensive coordinator there in the most crucial games of the season. I don't really want to berate the fact that he wasn't there. You hope he's okay. You hope he's healthy. But that just makes you wonder, in addition to what UCLA is attempting to get defensively, will they switch around roles and once again, for 3 seasons in a row, come 2023, have 3 different defensive coordinators from 21 to 22 and potentially in 23? Is that the option Chip Kelly needs to go, depending on if Bill McGovern is not fit enough for the role? And we'll see. Those are all big, important things for UCLA football. And other than that, I haven't seen any big news other than the punter coming, Will Powers, all 3-time All Ivy League, coming back to more of his hometown of SoCal when he grew up. And we'll see how that helps with the UCLA recruiting in terms of more and more transfer portal commits coming through. Other than that, we're going to talk UCLA basketball, but not before we tell you about LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every potential new hire feels like a high-stakes wager for your small business. If you want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available, you want to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy for you to focus on candidates with the right skills like you need to hire or interview them. That's why small businesses rank LinkedIn Jobs number 1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Well, while we await news for football, the game's still not for a couple weeks. You're still waiting for maybe portal commits, the lack thereof, to really define the offseason heading into spring practice into early 2023. So it's truly this week, barring a flipped commitment or a transfer portal commit, this week is strictly important for UCLA's non-conference basketball season that can help shift UCLA for Mick Cronin's bunch up and down the seed line to maybe get from what I think the first bracketology I saw, a 4 seed, to maybe cruise higher to a 3, if not a 2 seed, with a big week this week. What am I talking about? UCLA has got Maryland and then Kentucky this week, which are truly two matchups. And before we get to those, I wanted to talk about UCLA and their moving tributes to Jalen Hill as the Bruins took on Denver. So before that Denver game, UCLA honored Jalen Hill, if you remember, the former Bruin who retired due to mental health reasons, due to personal issues, and retired at the end, I believe, the 2021 season, stepped away earlier, and then announced afterwards he was retiring. So he wasn't with the team last year, stepped away, and then earlier, a few months ago, it was announced that he passed away, I believe, in Costa Rica. And the Bruins, this being their last home game of the non-conference, their second to last home game, the last one before his birthday. He's actually born on December 17th, the day of the Kentucky game, but this being the last home game before then, they brought his parents out. They honored him. They had a little mini memorial for the Bruins, I believe, attended an actual memorial on the day after the Denver game. And there's still Bruins players who played with Jalen Clark and were very tight with him, like from Jalen Hill, who was they were tight with with Jalen Hill. Jalen Clark was very tight with Jalen Hill, and those two went back to their youth days. Even Jaime Hawkins Jr., who wears the number 24, which is what Hill wore, he actually called him up, texted him after he left, said if it was okay to wear the number and switch it. Hill gave him the okay. So a lot of ties with some of the older Bruins on this team, despite a lot of youth in the 22-23 team, still some ties and connections, especially with Mick Cronin as the Bruins honored the life of Jalen Hill. And there hasn't been more information out as to what happened they said he was disappeared and then they just found the body and that he had passed away. There hasn't been any addition to the story, but they honored him. And the Bruins, to start the game against Denver after the ceremony, actually had a play called 24 out lob because Jaime Hawkins Jr. has the lob. So they ran it, I believe, 2 or 3, if not 4 times against Denver, trying to lob it up in honor of Jalen Hill and Jaime Hawkins Jr. getting the lob. Denver packed it in with the zone, so I believe it was a little bit tough to get that play off. But with the Bruins ready to go, they dominated Denver 87-64. Mind you, after the tribute, they got to business, and while they did answer the questions, they pretty much took care of business against the Pios of Denver out of the Summit League. The Bruins, who averaged about 80 points per game coming to this game against a Denver team who is one of the best teams at field goal shooting percentage in the country overall, still shot 50%, but the Bruins held them under 70. Denver had been averaging close to, I would say, 80 points per game. UCLA averaging just about 80 points per game, 50% from the floor. One of Mick Cronin's teams, as he said in his 2-decade-long head coaching career in D1, that he actually has, this is arguably the best shooting percentage team he's had. Maybe not a team that shoots the three as much as other teams could have, but UCLA has a good shooting percentage. Thus, UCLA 87 points to Denver 64. What were some of the things that were not only impressive, but also tying it into Jalen Hill? Jalen Clark, one of his best friends, you've already heard the story, but 24 points. Jalen Hill wore number 24. UCLA forced 24 turnovers, and that led them to a dominant victory. So 24 points for Clark, 24 points, 24 turnovers forced, and UCLA on those 24 turnovers, 30 points off of those turnovers. 30 points off the turnovers as UCLA was able to get to it, force the turnovers, and score easy buckets. Overall, in the 87 points they scored, because the Bruins truly didn't get to the free throw line that often, they were able to score, I believe, 56 points in the paint. 56 points, and just assert their will down low. They scored 56 points in the paint. Denver scored 30. So they kept them out of the paint, and UCLA beat Denver by 23. So largely, this game was won due to easy points gotten because they forced those turnovers and scored easy points. If you go up and down the scoring list, Clark led the team with 24 points. And remember, it's been a week and a half, maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks, since Clark missed that Bellarmine game when he was feeling under the weather. So it's nice to see him get through that first week of Pac-12 play. I believe the Bruins getting through finals, get that game against Denver, and see Clark truly into more peak form and to full shape. And of course, he was playing well, and with the team honoring someone he was close to on the team from when he grew up, he scored the 24 points. Nice to see him playing better. Jaime Jaquez Jr., 18 points, 11 shots. Fantastic. And a Bruin you have to really call out in a good term, Dylan Andrews. Nice to see Dylan Andrews, 11 points, 6 assists, 4 rebounds in 21 minutes of action, because a lot of what Mick Cronin has said this year is he doesn't want to play fatigued players down the stretch. As even against these mid-major programs and whoever he's playing in the non-conference, even if it's not a Kentucky or Maryland, he has been riding the starters, including a Tiger Campbell and Amari Bailey at times, Jaime Jaquez Jr., up and down the floor for 30 minutes a game, 33 if not more, in close games, even if they're not too close at the end. As UCLA, he wants to get these fatigue players off the floor and have a deeper team. And while, yes, he used the bench top to bottom for the whole squad for the Bruins, top to bottom, UCLA isn't as completely deep when it comes to scoring, and they need to find that extra scoring, especially if you can get Tiger Campbell off the floor. He hasn't been shooting as much, not to say that you want him off the floor, but you want him rested and ready and coming in, not overworked. Considering Mick Cronin's asking him to do more, you want to give him time to be fresh and bountiful with energy coming off the bench after a quick breather. And if Dylan Andrews can be a nice guy that can average 5-6 points, something that he has given at times, but consistently making maybe 5-6 points a game to 8 points, get a couple of assists, grab a couple of boards, and have maybe only a turnover in each appearance and limit those numbers to turning it over and increasing the positives, then UCLA could find themselves with an extra young weapon off the bench, adding on to the freshmen that they have with Bona and Amari Bailey. If Andrews can tack on there, that can add on to what UCLA wants to bring on off the bench. The likes of David Singleton, who is a three-point sharpshooter. You bring Andrews in as a point guard. Find one of the two big men to help Bona out off the bench, and maybe UCLA can find the right lineup going forward that Mick Cronin might maybe tinker this team into a team that very well should be capable of winning the Pac-12 and just competing with Arizona, maybe Arizona State at this point, and whoever decides to make a big jump during Pac-12 play in this up and down, topsy-turvy Pac-12 start in the non-conference. I don't really know what to think of the Pac-12. Either way, UCLA dominates Denver. They've won 5 in a row since that weekend in Vegas. And what happens in Vegas, I guess, is you can say the cliche, stays in Vegas. Maybe for those losses for UCLA, losing to Illinois, losing to Baylor. Now the Bruins, they got to prepare themselves for an equally tough week upcoming, as I've already talked about. Maryland and Kentucky, for various different reasons, this is a very important week. And while I'll tell you about that in a moment, let's talk about SimpliSafe, because we believe home should be where you and your family feel the safest, especially over the holidays. This season, give yourself and your family the gift of peace and protection with the #1 rated home security, SimpliSafe. Right now, SimpliSafe is offering Locked On UCLA listeners, or you and YouTube viewers, 40% off a new security system. Don't put this off. 40% off. Just know that SimpliSafe was named the best home security system of 2022 by U.S. News and World Report a third year in a row. In emergencies, they've got 24/7 professional monitoring agents that use Fast Protect technology exclusively from SimpliSafe to capture critical evidence, verify that threat is real, and make sure you get priority police response by verifying that threat is real. You can lock for guests, access cameras, or adjust security systems anywhere, anytime. Don't miss your chance to save big on your what should be the favorite security system. 40% off you should get at simplisafe.com/lockedoncollege. Again, go to simplisafe.com/lockedoncollege. Get 40% off There's no safe like SimpliSafe. All right, let's wrap up Locked On UCLA today. The Bruins, continuing with the basketball, they've got Maryland and Kentucky. And while we're not going into the likes of full details, full keys to the game just yet, let's set the scene, right? UCLA heading into this one, they are right on cue as the Bruins are sitting here 8-2, winners of 5-0, 5 in a row, unbeaten at home, 7-0 at Pauley Pavilion, and we'll hope that stands true this season. And in true road games, considering they've only played one at Stanford, they're 1-0. Away from Pauley, UCLA, in their first 10 games, has played 3. The 2 in Vegas, which UCLA lost, and then the 1 in Stanford, which UCLA had full control of, gave it away a little bit, and then got back and beat Stanford 80-66. So for UCLA, a true road game against Maryland on Wednesday evening in College Park at the Xfinity Center, and then a neutral site, albeit cross-country road trip to Kentucky in Madison Square Saturday in the middle of the day, about as prime time as it gets in college basketball, even though bowl season's starting, but as prime time as it gets against the Kentucky Wildcats in Madison Square. Both teams feeling good about themselves. So first, why is this Maryland game so important? First, it's a test for Mick Cronin's bunch. What's it like to go play on a Saturday and then go fly in the middle of the week to Maryland, where that's your Big Ten opponent? And this is just a test one. UCLA, this is what travel is going to be like down the stretch, unless they divide the Big Ten even into more interesting divisions, and if they change scheduling in Big Ten basketball even more. In football, there's one thing, but for Big Ten basketball, let's pull it up for you guys, because for the Big Ten, this is how it looks like. I'm trying to pull it up real quick for myself, but for the Big Ten, there is no divisions in their basketball conference, and one wonders, while there is divisions in football, what's it going to be like when it comes to basketball? Well, until then, we don't know if there will be divisions, but UCLA gets to play a Maryland team that comes in also 8-2. They started the season 8-0, and before this last week, depending on how things shifted, could have vaulted into the top 10 or just to the edge of it before they dropped 2 in a row. Maryland lost at Wisconsin in their second Big Ten game of the year. Mind you, they lost by 5, 64-59, and then a neutral site game in New York at the Barclays Center. And I guess it says New York, New York. I don't know if it's either at the Barclays Center, wherever it was. They played Tennessee and lost by 3. And Tennessee at then number 7. Now Tennessee is number 6 in the country. So these are Maryland's big wins. A recently ranked Miami team who is 10-1, and Miami's only loss was to Maryland. Maryland on a neutral site beat them by 18. And Miami just recently hopped in the top 25 as UCLA is now number 16 in the country. Maryland beat Illinois by 5, 71-66 at home about a week ago against the Fighting Illini in their Big Ten openers. They've already beaten Illinois, a team that beat UCLA by 11 and destroyed them in that second half. And then they go on a weird week where they lose to Wisconsin on the road, a team who was receiving votes at the time, and then Tennessee before hosting UCLA. Maryland is reeling, but they're undefeated at home, 5-0, and this is UCLA's only second true road game of the season. And still, you can't get caught looking forward to Kentucky on Saturday, because this Maryland game, mind you, a little bit of the pizzazz of it has been knocked away considering they lost 2 in a row. But this is still an important game to build your resume. Would be a quad 1 win on the road. If you forget what that means, it's about a 1 to a 50, depending on how that you rate it, 1 to 75, 1 to 50 wins at home. And UCLA doesn't really have any quad 1 wins at home. Quad wins on the road, you can widen that ranking. If you remember, that's what the committee goes by, quad 1 wins on the road. And that could be the difference between a number 1, 2, or 3 seed, for better or for worse for UCLA, and putting them in a more favorable region with a more favorable run to get to a Sweet 16 and set themselves up for a Final Four potential run to the national championship game. But it comes while people don't like to pay attention to college basketball now. We're all caring about the portal of college football. We're all caring about bowl games, college football playoff, Heisman trophies, whatever it may be. UCLA, these are games that can set yourselves up for success. Even if they lose, yes, they will learn a lot from this week. This is a week that is equally as important as that Illinois Baylor week. UCLA will learn so much about themselves in a true road atmosphere in Maryland. And while they played at a neutral site in Vegas, obviously Baylor and Illinois having to travel so much further west than UCLA's 1 hour flight. This time you fly all the way across the country to Maryland. You play that game. You go up to New York, a game that will probably be filled, I would think, with Kentucky fans who are going to go fill it up in blue, in Kentucky blue, and wear out the stadium with Kentucky chants, Wildcat chants, Go Cats, whatever it is. They'll get themselves excited to go play UCLA. And while that Kentucky game will be fun, if UCLA beats Maryland, they'll be on a 6-game winning streak, while Kentucky, who also has 2 losses, albeit still in the top 15 in the country, I believe they're number 12, Kentucky is 7-2. They've won 4 games in a row. So that could be an intriguing matchup for these are teams that are going one way or the other. They've got 2 losses compared to one another. At the end of the week, UCLA is either going to have a 1-1 week, which would be a good week. You get 3 losses, but you get a quality win on the road or a neutral site, and one of these other teams gets their 3rd loss. Or you take 2 losses, and then UCLA has to look inwardly. You take 2 losses, you look inwardly, and you have to question yourself. UCLA has beaten all the teams they should beat, but then they wouldn't have beaten anybody away from home that's any good. You go 2-0, and then it's, all right, the Bruins have fixed this. They know how to play against good competition, and they've been tested on the road. That could put them in conversation for a 1 or a 2 seed. You sweep this week, regardless how it looks, barring something crazy, you're back into conversation of knocking on the door of the top 10. And if they play well the rest of the way, UCLA could be in the conversation for a top 1 or 2 seed. Not the moment, but this is one of those weeks that sets up the conversation and the hype throughout the year. Kentucky, their losses coming in double overtime to Michigan State on a neutral site, and in Spokane, but not at Gonzaga's home gym, in a different arena where Gonzaga took care of business against Kentucky, winning by 16. So these are teams that have been taken to it in the second half of games. Maryland, their 2 losses last week by a combined 8 points. Kentucky, heartbreaking in one of them because Oscar Tshiebwe was just getting back into health. And then Gonzaga beating them down practically at home, but not in their home arena because of Coach Cal's doing, if you remember that. And then UCLA gets to go play Kentucky in a road environment on a neutral site in New York and then at Maryland. This is the team building week. One of those that says UCLA is nationally relevant in the top 10, or if UCLA is going to have to play from the 3 or 4 seed and build themselves up in a March Madness scenario to work their way through a tournament, if not a 5 seed, if everything goes wrong in the Pac-12. So this is a true test to see how far the Bruins have come. Can they score consistently against good teams? Is the defense good? The defense wasn't good enough, giving up about 80 points per game in those 2 matchups against Baylor and against Illinois. How far has the defense come against Maryland and Kentucky? That will be key. The defense, is it for real, or have they been feasting on poor teams, bad teams, not teams that are the same quality of UCLA, what they're going to face deeper in the tournament? Although it does prepare them for those first-round games against those lower seeds. UCLA, this is a big chance for Mick Cronin to really solidify not who just his rotation is, but to figure out who are those key contributors that we didn't see in that Vegas weekend at the Continental Tire main event. Who are those guys that can stand up and make a stand and be incredibly important to UCLA's season from the back half of it heading into March? Well, it's up to UCLA to figure it out. Throughout the week, we'll keep up on portal commits. Dante Moore, Dante to LA. Dante to LA. We'll see if it actually happens. I'm not entirely convinced. And if any more commits happen, UCLA recruiting news, we'll be on top of it. In the meantime, UCLA fans, just know it's Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer, your diehard UCLA fan and D1 play-by-play broadcaster. We'll keep you up to date with everything UCLA basketball and everything UCLA athletics. This is your daily podcast for UCLA. Get your hands in the air, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA fight, fight, fights. Just stay tuned to tomorrow's episode for Locked On UCLA. We're going to highlight Tiger Campbell and his shooting woes. Are they something to be of concern, or not? That's what's coming out tomorrow. And if anything breaks in the portal, we will be on top of it. So look out for that episode highlighting the basketball team. This has been Locked On UCLA. Go Bruins, baby. Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer out. Go Bruins.